Hello, alumni and friends. Drew Ashwell, Alumni Director at OCC, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Linda Lawson, professor here at the college in the area of Christian education, children's ministry, women's ministry, and this is another edition of Up Close and Personal, and so I'm glad you're viewing today, and I'm sure you're going to be blessed by hearing from our sister Linda. So Linda, how long have you been teaching, both here at OCC and prior to OCC?
Teaching college-age students about 15 years.
Okay.
So
And
in the
here
classroom
at
here. At Ozark, I've been here, we've been here 10 years. I have taught 8 years full-time, served as Dean of Women, and taught part-time the first 2 years we were here.
Okay, all right. And prior to coming to Ozark?
We were at Kentucky Christian College, now Kentucky Christian University. Again, I was on staff for several years, and then having completed my master's degree, I taught with them for about 5 years.
Okay, all
So.
right. Do you have a variety of classes you teach here at the college? Kind of share with our friends and alumni all the different classes you teach.
All the different ones. Okay, I have taught certainly in the area of Christian education, certainly in the area of children's ministry, various classes in that area. Taught some in women's ministry and enjoyed that as well. I've just pretty much I teach whatever they tell me to teach. But I also have some ministry classes, practical ministry for women, and I also do a ministry spouse seminar occasionally. So
All right.
that's a little bit of everything.
Well, we live in a messed up world, and our culture is moving further and further away from God's ideal every day. Why do you think children's ministry is so important in our churches today?
Well, Drew, again, you've hit the nail right on the head. We do have a world that is, just losing all foundations, all groundwork. It's almost like we're living in a world of sand, that no matter how you try to get anywhere, it's changing. I think that if we don't help children to be grounded in something that doesn't move, something that will sustain them through the torrent of evil, just the messages that our world blasts at them constantly. We need to be, just surrounding them and infiltrating them with a Christian worldview, with the message of God's love and God's hope, that this is not a hopeless world and you're not just doomed because that's what our world says. You might as well enjoy it while you're here because that's all there is. There's so much more, and there's so much hope and faith, and we need to capture kids early so that they're not lost in the culture that we are finding ourselves in.
Well, Linda, share with our viewers what classes in the children's ministry area have you taught or will you teach in the days ahead?
Well, I've taught a class called Current Trends in Children's Ministry, and each time we teach that, there's more to add to that, because to be current means to change. So there's quite a bit of that. I do teach the children's ministry class, the core class in the program, which deals, a lot with the sponsor training, how to program, how to discipline children in the classroom, and train volunteers to know how to discipline. We take some field trips. I do some seminars. One year I took a group of students to Indianapolis, and we toured several children's ministry facilities, some just amazing facilities in the Indianapolis area. Some great fellows up there working in that area. This year we're taking a trip to the Kidman Conference. It will be in Ohio, and it is sponsored by Group Publishing. It's a phenomenal conference, and I think I have 7 or 8 signed up to take a van and head up to Ohio, so I'm real excited about that.
Oh, yeah. Do you have a favorite aspect of children's ministry?
Probably kids. I absolutely love children. I love preschoolers, 2 and 3-year-olds, babies, to elementary school kids. I love watching them learn. I absolutely love seeing them make sense of their world, learn language and Bible. I've seen even a 1-year-old Sunday school class taught to 1-year-olds, all sitting up in little chairs. And one little girl in this class, the teacher does a very repetitive type of curriculum, and in that she has them pat the Bible, and they go around and every baby pats the Bible, and she pats the Bible and tells them it's God's Word, it's a special book. And you could see this one little girl just learning to talk, and she pats that little book, and you could hear her saying the B sound and a couple of syllables after that. So she was just learning to say Bible. And that was just, that sets my heart afire. And knowing that some of their first words could be Bible, Jesus, church. But I also really love, my second love, is watching volunteers get excited about connecting with children. I've had so many fellows that I've worked with that says I don't do kids, and then they do kids and they find out I really like this. So remember on a field trip at Kentucky Christian, I had a young man. We had done the Indianapolis field trip, and we were on our way home, and he said, I had no idea guys could be involved in this. He says, I think that's what I want to do. Neat. And, and he was, not that I want to steal youth ministers, but that seems to be more accepted for gentlemen instead of children's ministry. And some of them just need the exposure to find out, whoa, I love this even more than I love working with, another age group. So it's exciting to just watch people get connected with kids and share Jesus with them. It's wonderful.
All right. Linda, what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that are being made in children's ministry today?
Biggest mistakes. I think not focusing on relationship, worrying more about programs than relationship. We tend to, churches tend to hire a children's minister to kind of keep the kids busy while the adults do the real stuff. Instead of having the philosophy that there's a lot going on in that children's church room, and there needs to be more than the children's minister standing up front leading the lesson. There needs to be enough volunteers in there that the kids can have relationship. And I think that you should have solid program. I think you should have fun, but I devoid of connection with adults. You're missing the mark, I think, on what needs to happen in the life of a child, because they need to know that you care about them. And as a children's minister, you can't have that deep of a relationship with 30 or 40 kids or 100 and 200 kids, whatever your ministry has. You need to share that load, and I try to train children's ministers that say your responsibility is to train those that are working with the children. And so that, I would say, is probably the biggest mistake, thinking that doing something big and pizzazzy is more important than focusing on the relationships that need to develop.
Linda, what advice would you give to someone who is just starting out in children's ministry?
First thing you need to do, heart and soul, is give it over to God in prayer. It's got to be His ministry, not yours. And it needs to be, I like to tell my students, you need to learn the culture that the church is in. You can't take a rural congregation and do city programming. You can't take a city church and do rural programming. It's very important that you learn the culture of the area and capitalize on it in your program. What's been done before, if any, a lot of our students are going into brand new ministries, so they're making their own path. But those that are stepping into someone else's shoes, just be careful not to criticize. You have to understand they were doing the best they knew to do, and your idea is to, I think, encourage that. We have a great ministry here, let's see how we can make it better. Get to know the staff, the people you're working with. I like to say, don't change anything big for a year. Just try to learn your people and start encouraging, fix little irritations, but mostly you're just learning the culture, and hang in there. It sometimes looks a mess when you start, and it's really, to someone else, it wasn't a mess. So you just need to figure out, how can I build from here? What can God do with what resources, what people, what culture is available in this place, and make it unique to that situation.
What aspects of children's ministry do you think will change in the next, say, 10 years?
Certainly, we're already seeing it, but technology. I am astounded at the number of elementary school children that have iPhones even. It is absolutely astounding.
Amazing.
And we're not talking 6th and 7th and 8th grader elementaries. We're talking 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. I was astounded. My granddaughter Emmeline was at my house this past week, and while I was out preparing supper, she found my cell phone, and she powered it on, slid open the lock for the iPhone. She searched through the icons and found the one she wanted for the internet, signed on to that, found her video that's from the theme song from the Cars movie, and hit play. And I'm like, you're 2. She's 2 years old and 2 months, 26 months. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we are going to have to put out some software that introduce kids to Jesus. We're, way earlier than we're thinking. And there's just such a market for all of that. But beyond that change, which, like I said, we're already seeing now, I also see the movement toward more age integration. Instead of having unique classes for an individual grade, we're seeing the value of integrating children. Our schools have so separated, to where there's a 1st and 2nd grade building that all the 1st and 2nd graders in the county, and then they move through that in a very peer-dominated environment for most of their schooling from there all the way through high school. And so we're kind of shocked that they don't know how to interact with anyone except people their own age. And so I think we're going to see the move back toward, as the pendulum goes back and forth, needing to connect ages together. The homeschool movement has certainly had marvelous results with using older and younger together. And I think the church is capitalizing on that. They're moving more into integrating families. And because of that, trying to come up with programming that is effective for teens, elementary, preschool, and parents, and trying to make that all work together. Truth is, they're the core of the spiritual journey, and needing to move that direction, I think, is going to be key in our church ministries to children and their families.
Are there children's ministry resources, both in print or online or conferences, that you would especially recommend to our alumni and friends today?
It's hard to keep up. The publishing world is just coming out with so much stuff. But certainly foundational information. Catherine Stonehouse has some interesting books on joining children on the spiritual journey, and several others. And so needing to develop a good philosophy of children's ministry and working with children, Catherine Stonehouse would be good. Of course, Barna. We see him in all kinds of church statistics, but he does have some really good information related to children. I believe his book, Transforming Children into Spiritual Champions, he comes out and says he missed the whole boat about ministry, because he always thought, keep the kids so the adults can have real ministry. But now he's seeing that if we don't invest in children, and the statistics that he came up with show that if you haven't become a Christian by the age of 13, you probably won't. And so really advocated strongly in that book about children's ministry. Also, of course, Reggie Joyner has done so much stuff with the Orange movement and using his curriculum and his programs. I don't think it fits every situation perfectly, but I think with, like I said, knowing your culture, knowing your place, I think you're able to adapt it to fit. But he really focuses on the intergenerational focus, using the idea of synergy with the church and the home, being a mixture of yellow and red and mixing those together to get orange, and that orange is more powerful, and more noticeable than red or yellow, which highway signs would testify to. Online, there are probably one of the resources I'd like to send them to is my favorite worship music is through a family called, their last name is Seeds, which is Seeds, just like the planted kind. And they do a plethora of songs that are all scripture. And they have some interesting media with them that you can, buy media to display. But they're all songs, and we remember things that we sing. And so just getting scripture into song form is a powerful thing. And so I would send people there. I was trying to remember, I have several blogs at home, but I don't have their names readily handy. But there's a lot of people writing about children's ministry on blogs, and I'm sure a Google search would reveal those. But just see what people are saying and talking about, spending a morning or an afternoon a week just looking at what's out there and what people are saying keeps you fresh in your ministry. Right. So I would just direct them. A lot of people are very technology based, and so getting out there and doing that. I think some of these resources that I've mentioned are also available in either Kindle or Audible, and being able to hear them rather than read them seems to be this generation's tendency.
Yes,
so
it is. That's for sure. Linda, what words of encouragement would you like to share with our alumni and friends who are in ministry and are really struggling right now?
Stay faithful. God is with you. It'll work out. When things don't go well, my family always laughs. I always say, "Oh well," and I move on. The truth is, God says that He will use whatever happens for the good, whether it's personal good or kingdom good. It's up for debate, but it is what it is, and just moving forward. My encouragement is just stay faithful. Keep your prayer life in line. Keep your communication with God open. Communicate with your leadership team. Keep your heart where it needs to be, and life will be okay. And find a good person to be accountable with, to share with, that will listen and not judge, but not just let you slide by with bitterness or whatever you're struggling with. And nothing like a good friend. A good friend loves at all times, and we all need friends even when we don't want to admit it. So those would be the words of encouragement I would have. And I think that being faithful does not always mean things work out. And God calls us to faithfulness, not productivity, not giant results. God calls us to be faithful and let Him take care of the results, and just, like I said, hang in there.
Linda, with these video interviews posted online, we have the potential of not just thousands, but tens of thousands of viewers, and many will be hearing your story for the first time, and you have a story to tell. Would you share with our viewers, back up a couple of years, and just walk back through your battle with cancer and how God's hand has been at work in your life over the last couple of years?
It's been an amazing time. Lots of ups and downs, as you would anticipate. In February of 2010, I started experiencing a lot of leg pain, and through a lot of series of visits to a lot of different places, by June they finally sent me for an MRI. And when they did an MRI, they found a large mass in my lower back, spine, pelvis area, and scheduled me for surgery to have part of it removed, trying to relieve some of the, it was laying on a nerve, which is why I was experiencing so much leg pain. The doctor sawed off some of the tumor and had it biopsied, and of course found out it was cancer, and it was one of the most treatable cancers from what I hear, which is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and diffused B cell, for those of you in the cancer world. So they had sent off for some more, long, kind of a 10-day study on the biopsied material. And during that time, then they started to figure out what tests would need to be done to see what kind of treatment I would undergo. And so I had several tests scheduled locally here. And I was in the process one evening. I was supposed to fast and go into the hospital for another test the next day. And the doctor, my oncologist here, called me and said she had just gotten the biopsied material back, and it's a kind of a mutation or a subset of that type of cancer, and it is growing very rapidly. And maybe doubling in as much as every 20 days. And so this mass that was the size of a large man's fist, in another 20 days it was going to be double that size. And so, and at that point they had located quite a few tumors up and down the spine and in other areas. And so the oncologist said, it's not just cancer, it's aggressive cancer, and we cannot treat you in Joplin. You need to get to a cancer center. And, that's pretty devastating to hear. Even the first diagnosis in early June of cancer, you go through the whole roller coaster of emotions. And then I just, God just gave me a sense of peace, and I knew it is what it is, and we'll have to take whatever steps are necessary to do whatever happens. And I've never been one that felt like, because you're a Christian, God has to heal you. I knew that this could end badly, as far as my family would think. It would be a victory for me. And so, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, it is what it is. And so I asked the doctor. She was trying to get me into a cancer center in St. Louis, and I says, well, what about MD Anderson? I'd heard so many wonderful things about MD Anderson. And she said, well, there's usually a 6-month wait to be able to get an appointment in there. I don't think we can get you in there. And she says, you're welcome to see what you can do, but, not likely. Well, this is where God really has one of those remarkable hands that you just never realize. My sister took a pay cut to work at Austin's Children's Museum, and assistant to the director of the museum. Just so happens her boss, who loves her dearly and is a great friend, is best friends with the director of the Lance Armstrong Foundation, which is the volunteer support network that's associated with MD Anderson. And I believe a phone call was made, and I received, this was on Wednesday a Wednesday at the end of June. I received a call within hours that I had an appointment Thursday morning. And I thought, oh my goodness. So Tom and I caught a flight out of Tulsa on Thursday night. And really, Drew, when I left, I figured, well, we'll go down there, they'll figure out what I need, and then they'll send me back home for treatment. And so I packed for a week, and we got down there, and amazing facility, but found the lymphoma clinic, and they do blood work initially, and then they start with the interviews and had all my tests and everything. And the physician's assistant I was talking to says, well, here's what happens. You'll have some tests tomorrow, and then probably again on Monday or Tuesday, and then by Wednesday we'll have all your results, and you'll meet with your oncologist on Wednesday, and we'll decide from there. And I said, okay, fine, we've got the room for a week, not a problem. And they start taking my history, they look at the tests from the hospital here, and the next thing I know, they've called my oncologist out of the hospital, she was doing rounds, back into the clinic to see me. And she looked at me, and we hadn't hardly had any words, but she looked at me and says, you're not going back to your hotel. I'm admitting you today now. And if I don't have a bed open, I will admit you through the ER. Well, at that point, I realized I was in serious trouble because, no place takes a patient they've never seen before and immediately starts treatment. And so it was Thursday. On Friday, they ran all the tests. I went in at 5:30 in the morning. They started, and I had one test back to back right after each other. And they started chemo on Sunday night once all the tests were confirmed. And so, it was a very aggressive treatment. And a little bit like what Dickens says, the best of times and the worst of times. One of the things about a very aggressive cancer, is that if they catch it before the tipping point, which means the point of no return, that they probably can't save you. But if they catch it right before there, when it's being really aggressive, those are the ones that are most likely to react to chemo. And so I was in hospital for 6 days of 24-hour infusions. Nasty stuff. It kind of makes you wonder when they come in the hazmat suits carrying your medicine, and you're sitting there in a gown and thinking, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this picture. Yes. Shouldn't I be in a hazmat suit? And then why again are you putting that in my veins? It's kind of, scary. So I started chemo, lost all my hair, as most cancer patients do. Since it's a fast-growing cell, it targets it. But because my cancer was so aggressive, it responded amazingly to the round of chemo that they had there. And it was a regimen of chemo that is a little atypical for this type of cancer. But they gave it to me, and they do a restaging test, see where you are after the second round of chemo. So they do chemo, wait about 2 weeks hoping you recover, and then they do another one and they wait 2 weeks, and then they do restaging tests before they start the third round. When they did the restaging test, the largest tumor that I had been reduced by 80%.
Praise the Lord.
And by the end of the fourth round of chemo, which was in early October, they came in and said, we don't see any more cancer, but we're going to do 2 more rounds just to make sure. And so it was just a very scary time. It was, certainly pulled away from people, didn't want to get any germs, didn't want to get ill because that'll take your life. Down in Houston, of all places, in June, July, August, September, October, it was pretty hot and miserable. We left there, Thanksgiving Day is when they released me. So we had packed up the car, and of course it was a mere 98 degrees that day when we left. When we drove into Joplin, it was 28. But during the whole process, anytime I was getting close to being discouraged, which I didn't deal a lot with that during the time, God would send somebody to see me. I had a visit from a man who did my hysterectomy here in Joplin. He had retired to Houston, and somebody at Ozark knows him, and so he came to visit me in the hospital, which was just outstanding. So many friends and probably people I don't even know, churches I don't even know, prayed for me and helped send finances. Maintaining 2 homes is very difficult, and so it was just a very, what I learned most, however, was that the body of Christ is an amazing thing. It is so far and wide. I got a Facebook message, well, Tom really did. He ran most all the the updates and everything, because I just, I said, I don't know that I thought a clear thought most of the time I was going through chemo, but I had a message from someone that was in a retreat center that like 12 people get to go to a year. And it was like, I don't know if it was in the Alps or in someplace in Germany. I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was far removed from everything. And Stephen my son had posted it on his church's Facebook, or they have an email link that they send everything to people. So he sent an update to them, and somebody there knew somebody that then told her, you know, it was like 3 or 4 generations removed. And she just sent a message saying, I know you don't know me, but I'm really burdened, and I just want you to know that I'm on retreat and you're on my prayer list, and I'm praying for you. And the comfort that that brought, and it was, if you didn't have to have chemo to do it, it would be an adventure anyone should have. But chemo is a nasty bugger, and I don't wish that on anyone. And my heart goes out to those that are suffering and dealing with that. But we live in a world that has amazing medicine, and I cannot believe the hope and the joy and the laughter I heard at MD Anderson. It's not a faith-based facility, and workers are not to talk about their faith, but if you open the door, then they're allowed to. And so, you know, I had a couple decorations I would take in every time I went in for chemo, that one of Jesus, a little statue with Jesus and washing the disciples' feet, and this lady that came in to clean our room, you know, said, oh, you know, that's wonderful. And I said, I don't know what I would do without him, you know, and, you know, just knowing that he's with me. It was an amazing, amazing adventure. Met so many people that door opens. Kind of a remarkable journey, actually.
So where are we present day?
I remain cancer-free. Just got back from another round of tests in Houston, and everything looks good. So I'm at the about 2.5-year mark, and so very excited about that. My next visit isn't until February, so I was, you know, that's almost 8 months. Yeah. So I am very excited that it's been put off that long. I do have the only residual as far as physically that is I have some numbness in my foot, and, you know, my right foot, my lower leg, which, you know, has some ramifications. I'm on a medication. I've tried lots of medications, but just trying to get rid of the pain from neuropathy, so that walking isn't an issue. But then the medicine has sleepiness issues, which when you're a college teacher, that's not a good thing.
No, that's true. That's
we
true.
we don't have a place you can go take a nap
No,
in between classes. So, you know, there's just some balance of all of that. But every time I'm tempted to get frustrated, I know this is the day the Lord has made, and it is wonderful, and I will be glad in it. And every day's a gift, and I know that so much more now than I did before, because I didn't know I would live to see, you know, grandchild number 7 and grandchild number 8 being born, and also just growing and living, you know, and being able to see them grow up is such a blessing. Yes. So, I mean, I'm ready to go whenever he says it's time, but I am delighted to have more time here.
I noticed you just shared a scripture verse that meant a lot to you during your journey. Are there any other scriptures that were especially meaningful to you during your journey?
The idea of bearing one another's burdens became, you know, I always felt that was my responsibility, and it is, like the, you know, Ozark phrase, to serve, not to be served. Well, somebody has to be the servee or the whatever you call that. And it's very humbling to be on that end, to be the burden that other people are carrying, to be the one being served instead of serving. Very humbling. And God just helped me to see that's what it means to be a family, that sometimes you let people do for you. And we're all hard. That's hard for us as Christians. We tend to want to be the one reaching out, not the one that is being served. And I learned that. Also, I believe it's in 2 Peter. There's a verse that just says, "After you have suffered a little while, God will take care of that." That's comforting to know that it's not going to last forever. Whichever way it ends, it does end.
Yes, that's true.
I've prayed for many people to be healed, and they've passed away, and you could feel let down by that, or you could say they were healed in a way that this world will never heal them.
Right.
And so that, and lo, I am with you always. Whether it's through spinal injections or that nasty medicine coming into you, or one of my hardest times was when they shaved my head.
Sure.
That just was, I don't know why that made me cry, and the diagnosis didn't, but just losing the sense of self and learning, it is what it is, and you're just going to have to go through it. And didn't want any pictures. I was kind of a basket case about that. Yeah. But anyway, God is with you through everything, and we have no promises of survival, but we do have a promise that we don't have to go it alone. And I would share that with anyone. And I am so excited, and any of our alumni out there that don't have someone to talk to, I am more than willing to be a listening ear and an encourager, share what I know if that's necessary, but just to pray and to know, that somebody's listening and cares. And I've had lots of opportunities so far, and God doesn't give us anything except that we use it to help someone else. And I'm willing to listen, willing to help and step in there. And I suppose if I were going to give you a piece of advice, go to MD Anderson. Okay. It's a place of hope and joy. You would think a cancer center would be morbid. It was the funnest place I ever was confined to. And I would just encourage people to get a second opinion there. They have a little bit more cutting edge than your standard hospital. So even though you love your doctors, I think it's worth a second opinion before you begin treatment.